where he announced an energy policy. Tonight, Carney is in Saskatoon, a city that hasn't elected a Liberal MP in more than 30 years.
Under my leadership, it's time to build big time. Today, I'm announcing a comprehensive new approach to make Canada the world's leading energy superpower.
Carney is promising to make it easier to develop all of Canada's energy resources, including oil and gas. And one single office would decide on major projects within 2 years. The CBC's Catherine Tunney is traveling with Carney's campaign. Catherine.
David, Liberal leader Mark Carney's outreach to Albertans continued today. Unsurprisingly, it's here in Calgary that Carney pitched his promise to make Canada what he calls a superpower in both clean and conventional energy. He touched on the idea of energy security, promising to use Canadian energy to displace imported energy, including from the U.S. Carney has already committed to building pipelines across this country, but has also said a new pipeline would require Quebec's blessing, something the province hasn't been keen on. In his remarks, he thanks oil and gas workers for keeping Canada warm, an acknowledgement that many here feel ignored by the party Carney now leads. Will that be enough to melt years of building animosity? Well, the province remains a stronghold for the Conservatives, which is unlikely to change April 28th. The Liberals do say they feel confident they'll make inroads here in Calgary and add to their bench. Next up is Saskatchewan. The Liberals are hoping to win their first seat in the province since Ralph Goodale was defeated in 2019. David?
All right, Catherine, thank you so much. That's the CBC's Catherine Tunney in Calgary. Brad, safe, friendly ground for Mark Carney, Alberta, and then Saskatchewan. But the message he had today was a very different message on industrial policy and energy development, including oil and gas, than we've heard from Liberals for a long time. Do you think people will buy it? Because Daniel Smith and Scott Moe, probably skeptical.
Yeah, but those aren't the audience.
Yeah.
I would submit, because you're not really trying to get their votes. I'm sure they're already...
They may have done the advance voting early.
They might have put their ballot for another political party. This is to inoculate against a perceived weakness that Justin Trudeau had, which he was against Western resource extraction and development, and that was one of the things that really helped the UCP. It really helped the Saskatchewan Party, helped the Conservatives in British Columbia. Being anti-Trudeau. I mean, there was a time just within the last 18 months where everyone wanted to run before Trudeau left so that they could run against him and not their provincial competitor. So what Carney is doing is saying, I'm not like my predecessor. It's an inoculation against, and it's not just that. We have to understand that resource extraction in Western Canada is not an issue that the Conservatives get to own by themselves. New Democrat governments have been working on policy when we governed in Saskatchewan, Rachel Notley in Alberta, successive governments in British Columbia. There are more environmental policies in some of NDP provinces in the West than maybe under the UCP, but the Conservatives don't own oil and gas extraction. Now,
right.
If you want to get rid of U.S. imports on oil, then the one thing that you need, and we're going to have to come to terms with this as a country, if that's one of our united goals, is we're going to need some pipelines. Because right now it is way faster, way cheaper to bring up oil or natural gas from Pennsylvania into Toronto than it is to bring it in from Alberta or British Columbia.
But, Tim, maybe it's an inoculation against the criticism of Trudeau, but it's also about purely Western resource development, but it's also the criticism that there was no economic focus from that government, certainly not on industrial policy, and Carney's trying to move it front and center. Now, I don't know if this will actually get the oil and gas sector going, but he's talking about it in a way that on its face seems a lot less hostile.
Well, first of all, I think you should get Amanda's camera to zoom in behind the trees there, and you'll see Stephen Guilbeault tied up with a rag across his mouth, so he's not out.
He's not in Ontario.
Yeah, well, maybe they put him in Ontario in Amanda's back garden to keep him safe and away from the fold. I mean, it is fascinating, right? David also in that poll asked Canadians who they're crediting for the carbon tax relief.
It's Mark Carney by a mile.
Mark Carney by a mile. So if that credibility is transferable to this, at least as Brad says, in the rest of the country, that's probably a win for them. Now, look, the Conservatives are pushing back hard on this, but like every one of their other pushbacks at the moment, it doesn't seem to be denting him. And it's fascinating as well, of course, as it relates to this, because it's a big issue for Conservatives and Conservative voters, particularly in the East and in Alberta, but they have most of Alberta locked up, one would think. What's he going to do when he's in Montreal? He he being Pierre Poilievre, on that debate stage in French and English. How does he handle that particular issue there as well?
I think he's going to try to drive Mark Carney down so low in Quebec the bloc come up and limit the seats, because that seems has to be the play for them in Quebec, don't you think?
That has to be the play, but Pierre Poilievre, and Chachi can correct me if I'm wrong here, is the least popular, I believe, of the federal leaders in Quebec, so who knows how successful that will be. But like everything else for Mark Carney at the moment, the man has both Teflon and is walking in the air. It's quite an amazing thing. As much as the Conservative fall-off is and the 20-point lead disappears, even with the Trump interventions, Mark Carney has been blessed with a set of circumstances and luck that I haven't seen a political leader have ever.
It's quite a thing. Even that halo effect, more than half the country's giving him credit for dodging that bullet on the tariffs, and it's like, really?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Sure.
It's correlation and causation, right? They're all
Fine.
flying around.
It's all good. But on the pipelines, too, it's fairly low-hanging fruit in this moment because the tariffs have focused people who have either not been paying attention to these issues for so long. Where's climate change in this election? It's not even in the top 5. It's basically
Tied up behind the tree with Stephen Gaudreau there in his garden.
So there you go.
It's a busy tree.
People are very focused at the moment on the holy crap, what are we going to do in the face of sinking productivity, the tariffs, all the rest of it. And, the appetite for resurrecting dead pipelines, whether it's Energy East, whether it's Northern Gateway, 47% of Quebecers saying, yeah, sure, let's build that Energy East pipeline. So where were you guys 6 years ago? So it's not that much of a risk politically for the Liberals and for Carney. It's credible. It's belt and suspenders. Let's make sure we've got this box ticked. Let's make sure we've done this one.
Yeah, Amanda, going back to the reference about the carbon tax credit, from Coleto's poll, 55% give Mark Carney credit.
Yeah.
And the Liberals credit for getting rid of the carbon tax. 28% give Pierre Poilievre credit, and Pierre Poilievre, he euthanized carbon pricing in Canada, and like the Liberals getting credit for that is like Trump trying to take credit for the stock rebound today. You know what I mean? Like you put something in place people didn't like, you took it away, and you pat yourself on the back. It is very strange, but here we are, and now suddenly the Liberals are talking about pipeline development and oil and gas projects, which is a shift from 2024.
I mean, imagine being in the Conservative war room and looking at that piece of data today. They literally campaigned on that issue for 2 solid years, day in and day out, and somehow Carney gets the credit for it. So the truth is, if Trudeau had tried to make this announcement today, it would have fallen flat.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe because of the circumstances it went up. But Carney was the person who came in. He was the person who revoked the carbon tax. And he does, because of the temperature, the climate that we're in, he does have the ability to kind of capitalize and exploit on the appetite that Canadians to have to get resources to other markets, to diversify our markets. So when you start to connect those two communications goals, talking about the fear that people have, the anxieties they have around the Trump tariffs, and how, we have this huge buy Canadian sentiment, sort of exploit Canadian resources sentiment right now, he has a runway that the Liberals haven't had before to do some of the things that maybe they wanted to do, but really weren't able to do. And Carney is now occupying that space. Not only is he occupying it, but he's getting credit for it. It's a remarkable turn of events, but I can imagine that I don't know where this will land in terms of the issues that people care about the most, but I think it's up there. And as climate falls further and further behind, it really does give the Liberals some leeway to be talking about things that the Conservatives owned for a really long period of time.
Yeah, we have Elizabeth May and Jonathan Pedno coming up next hour. They've got some interesting thoughts on this, as you can imagine. And we're going to get to the NDP, but just because we're talking about all the pollsters, Ipsos, Daryl Bricker, they had a new poll out last night they did exclusively for Global News. Liberals favored to best manage energy, resources.
Wow.
If you're in the Conservative war room, your head is spinning because,
Popping off.
Well, just
quick, yep.
When a leader becomes popular, they become best at everything.
Yes.
So
Fair.
It's like the rising tide of Carney. He's good at education. He's good at healthcare. He's good at Indigenous affairs. He's like
Be setting up for the shortest honeymoon in the history.
Sure, but that's where it comes from, as opposed to he's got a far better policy.
That is a very salient point from the New Democrat.